Everybody knows that a lot of negative, terrible, awful things went on here. But for the people who lived here and died here and all that, I do think they deserve some sort of commemoration, you know? Something to note that there was something here. Grew up on the south side of Chicago, Illinois. I think I got a lot of different slices of the south side. I feel like the entirety of the south side of Chicago is like in my body. So when I think of like my hometown, I think of a large geographic area versus just like, you know, like a block or a home. My grandmother raised me. My grandmother's sister was the basic matriarch of the part of the family that lived in a Taylor home, so it was my aunt. And one of her cousins was like my age. It was like my main cousin that I grew up with. They all lived there.
A Chicago skyline, 5 miles south of the one most people know. This is Robert Taylor Homes, the largest housing project in the world, the poorest urban community in the United States.
A lot of people don't like to come in the project because they really, you know, they're afraid because they think something might happen to them. And I couldn't much blame them for that because a lot of people have got killed over here in the project.
Yeah, I mean, we just weren't allowed out a lot, especially not alone, not just as the children, because there, you know, gunfire was a pretty regular thing. And on top of the actual danger that you would hear and sometimes see, there was a lot of like criminal lore. There was a story of somebody called the Raper Man. And I don't know to this day if that was like an actual person, but that was something that we all heard about. Like, so there was a lot of like oral tradition and things becoming exaggerated, and you just didn't know what was real and what wasn't. So there was just a lot of reasons to be afraid. But that's the thing, you would hear about these things and not see them. And as an adult now, I think about, were those things real at all? I have no idea. You know, a big inspiration in terms of making songs about this was thinking about like the lore possibilities of this like ruined civilization. You know, like what would the stories be?
My other name is 3925. Make sure that my story's told. 16 and so stories high. Constructed 55 years ago. Winter weather, yeah, here we go. Shot town in my building code. Stood here for 10 million snows. Wind chilled is all in my bones.
We're on the barren field that is once where at least a couple of the buildings in the Robert Taylor home stood. It fades into the cityscape now like you would never know anything else that ever been here. There's no plaque, there's no mural, you know, it's just nothing.
Attention, I promise you I will never fit in your descriptions. I'm giant, don't let nobody tell you nothing different. They lying, a giant in my body is a building, a building, a building, a building.
Mentally, there were no landmarks because it was just the buildings. You just couldn't have seen them in the state they were in and imagine that they could have been removed in any way. They just seemed almost like if they'd grown out of the ground. A project building is a project building, man. In almost every city you go, there's such a consistency to like, it feels like almost the kind of bricks. These bricks, they look like the old project bricks. Same color for the yellow buildings. They had yellow buildings and they had like these burnt orange buildings. And the yellow ones, the bricks look a lot like these. Brick body complex, I mean, complex, of course, is a play on words in that sense because there's the housing complex, which is what that was. But then, you know, maybe there's a neuroses that comes along with spending too much time there. So maybe you develop a complex that way. You know, it had gotten so bad in the Robert Taylor homes, you know, ambulances wouldn't come in here. Police wouldn't come in here. Things would happen to them. All type of stuff would happen there. That's where drug dealers would be. That's where people would be using. If you get approached by a person in the breezeway of one of those buildings, it could be to sell you something. It could be to rob you. It could be to try to recruit you into a gang, you know. So the idea of the breezeway ritual is that there's a lot of these transformative actions that could happen in those dark spaces of those buildings.
Ghetto in the way I drink, uncle, my ship sank. Ghetto in the way I think, hide my troubles, my shit don't stink. Ghetto in the way I move, watch me groove how I sing my blues. Ghetto in the way I talk.
And it looked ominous. Not only the size of the buildings being intimidating, but that gate-type steel material that ran up and down, like the balconies. I didn't understand until actually doing research for this album that when the buildings were made, that wasn't on there, but people were like getting thrown off of them or falling off of them, so they decided to put these like cage fronts on the balconies. There's some aspects of physical caging that are implied, but I think a lot of it is just psychological. And so the brick Body Kids Still Daydream kind of speaks to, like, I think the hardening that happens to a person when they spend a lot of time in those kinds of environments.
This goes out to the ghetto children, hacking networks in the projects around the world. And ghetto children splicing cables in the projects around the world.
When did you start rapping? In 1996. I'd gone to Promontory Point, to the hip hop program, and seen people ciphering. It was the first time I ever saw people like rapping live for each other. And I read this book called Bomb the Suburbs that made no uncertain terms about if you called yourself hip hop, you had to do it. You couldn't just be an observer or dress the part. You had to be doing the things. And so like the things that I wanted to do was rap, and I wanted to do graffiti, and I wanted to break dance. So I started doing all three.
I can't lose no argument, I got my jewels. I keep my head down, pushing like I'm walking to school, yeah. I hold them tight like infinity gems. Policemen looking at me like I'm finna be him, no.
Mythology is a big part of the album. And yeah, in a song like Legendary Iron Hood, it's like the origin story of a superhero, but it's like a traumatic origin story. And I think it's reflective of like that environment and what someone who is, you know, introverted and having ideas and being creative in that environment might come up with. I think that mural, man, that mural's got to happen. No matter what happens, they gotta have a mural. It would be a fantastical retelling, starting with like slums and shanty towns, these buildings shooting up out of the ground that look nice and clean. The CIA plane flies over and drops crack all on the buildings, and then some of the people start turning into zombies, and then they would all start to fall down. The message is to like not overlook people's trauma, is to not think that like being dispersed or having your home erased is an easy thing to go through.
You like what you're doing, man. You come back to the community where it started at. That's where the whole thing is.
I mean, the biggest surprise is just to find out that people who lived here still get together. Like, that's the best surprise. That is what I'm looking forward to finding more about. But see, like, that's the kind of stuff that makes me happy, just to know that the people who were here are gonna like commemorate it and kind of make the memory of the place live on, even if like the city won't. The fact that they get together and still share that history, that's what I needed to hear, you know?
Can't none of y'all take it from me, yeah. Can't none of y'all take them from me, yeah. Can't none of y'all take it from me, yeah. Can't none of y'all take it from me, yeah.